Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to take a first look at the new Sigma 135mm f1.8 Art Series lens. Now, this is a lens that a lot of people have been anticipating, and the 135mm focal length is one that is quite popular. And over the last few years, I've seen a number of really excellent 135mm lenses released. And out of all of those, however, this lens has the new largest maximum aperture of any of them that I have reviewed. Many of the 135mm focal lengths have had a maximum aperture of f2. But of course, this one adds just a little bit brighter maximum aperture of f1.8 to it. And so for that reason, it sets itself apart from the others, and of course promises the now well-known reputation of Sigma lenses for being very sharp at wide apertures. And of course, we'll be testing that as a part of what we're looking at over the next little while. And so I'll encourage you to check back often. If you look in the description down below, I'll have an image gallery going and a link there. And so that you can check back to see the kinds of images that I'm getting with the lens as I proceed with my review period. And so today, however, we're here to take a look at the overall specifications, design, and give you a little bit closer look at how the lens itself is made. So of course, it is it's a pretty familiar look, and if you were checked in a few months back for my Sigma 85mm f1.4 art lens, you really have a pretty good idea of the general profile and look of this lens. And so that starts if you look towards the front, and of course always included is a very nice lens hood, and Sigma's doing a great job of just designing lens hood that look like a part of the lens. You know, some texture variety here, nice to grip on, a soft touch surface at the place where you mount and unmount the lens. And if you look inside the box, of course, it comes with, as is now a Sigma tradition, a nice padded case, which is very useful for storing the lens, and it also has a carrying strap if you want to carry the lens in the case like that. And so I'm always happy about that. Some nice accessories included here with the lens itself. But if we look towards the front of the lens, we're going to find that it has a larger than really any of the competitors that I have reviewed. It has an 82mm front filter thread. Now that is, of course, a little bit on the larger side, but at the same time, it is still a common filter thread. And so it is set apart from the 85mm, which had an 86mm front filter thread, a much less common filter thread size and also a much more expensive one. And so we have a little bit smaller diameter here as we enter into the lens. Now behind that we have a very nice and wide focus ring here that has a pretty good feel overall. You know, it doesn't move quite as smoothly as, say, like a Zeiss lens, you know, that kind of perfectly damped feel, but it moves smoothly overall with just a little bit heavier resistance than the best manual focus lenses. But it has, as you can see here, it has a pretty decent focus throw, and so if you are going to manual focus, there is some precision to be had there. And it does feature a full-time manual override with the Sigma's HSM focus motor. Now on the side of the lens, there are two switches here, and one of course is just an AF/MF switch if you want to disable autofocus altogether. And then underneath that there is a focus limiter, which in this case actually has 3 positions, which is nice. So the first position being the full range, then 1.5 meters to infinity, and then 0.875 to 1.5 meters. And so that gives you a sense there of the minimum focus distance of the lens itself, and so it can focus down to 0.875 meters, and that is at about 2.87 feet. Now that gives you a maximum reproduction ratio of 1:5 or 0.20 times. And so just a hair better than the Zeiss Batiste 135mm lens that I just reviewed, but not quite as good as, say, the Zeiss Milvus 135mm f2 lens that has a 0.25 times magnification. Still, because you can focus down nice and close, this lens is going to allow you to have really nice and tight headshots, and that's certainly a useful figure there. Now, one thing that began with the 85mm lens is the inclusion at least of a gasket here near the lens mount. It has a nice brass lens mount, but that gasket is a hint towards some moisture resistance. Now, optically, this lens is 13 elements in 10 groups, and so, you know, reasonably complex, but not as complex as some other that I've seen along that line. And it has 9 rounded aperture blades, which is pretty much standard for the Art series overall. And so in the overall dimensions, at the widest point, it's 3.6 inches around. That's 91.4 millimeters. And it is 4.52 inches long, or 114.9 millimeters. Now, in terms of the weight, this is another hefty Art series lens. And because it has a fairly large front element, depending on the camera body you're mounting it on, you may find it a little bit front heavy. On my 5D Mark IV, it's not too bad, but just for demonstration purposes here, I've got it on a Canon 80D, and it definitely feels front heavy on a smaller body like that. So it is almost 2.5 pounds, 2.49 pounds, or 1,130 grams. Which makes it certainly a hefty lens and significantly heavier than a lens like, say, the Canon 135mm f2L. And so this lens continues that tradition of being quite heavy overall. Now, this lens is a mixture of some metal bits along with Sigma's engineered plastics, or, you know, thermal composite. And so, but overall, these Sigma lenses, really, they have a nice feeling build to them. And of course, a very good looking, very clean design. One of the things that Sigma kind of delineates in their press release, and it is an important thing these days as more and more of the manufacturing gets outsourced, Sigma takes a lot of pride in that their lenses continue to be made in Japan at their factory there. And so if that's a big deal to you, just know that that continues to be the case with this. This lens, of course, also has compatibility with Sigma's USB dock, and so that gives you some ability to fine-tune the autofocus and tweak a few features on the lens. And as I found so far, this lens has a nice focus speed. Sigma has, starting with the 85 Art series lens, they've really worked at increasing the torque and the motor. And so overall, the lens now has a more snappy focus speed to it. Now, I have tried using the lens a bit on a Sony a7R II body that I still have on hand because it'll probably go back next week. But and so I've used that with the Metabones 4 adapter, and autofocus speed there is not really incredible, although I suspect it will be somewhat better with Sigma's own adapter for those of you that are Sony shooters and are looking to adapt this lens. Expect that a lens this heavy, however, is going to be really front heavy on a body like the a7R II, and so that's just something to bear in mind there. So overall, you're going to find that there's no real surprises there. I've reviewed most all of the Sigma Art series lenses, and so I've become pretty familiar with their design, their strengths and weaknesses, and I've seen a trend to much improved autofocus accuracy in some of the recent releases. And so I am expecting and hoping for more of the same here. So we'll be breaking down the image quality as I begin to get deeper into the review. So if there's other things you would like to see me cover as a part of this, I certainly will try to accommodate that, but just know that often the suggestions are to compare it with this lens or with that lens. There's only so many lenses I can bring at a time, and I only have so much time. And so those kind of comparisons will be limited to basically what I have on hand, but I certainly am open to evaluating different things that you want looked for on the lens. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you haven't already, you can follow me on social media or sign up for my newsletter. Visit my website, dustinabbott.net, and of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.